Hey folks, I know I am just an old guy telling stories, but please leave a like and subscribe before we start. Let's enjoy in today's stories. Before I dive into the story, I just want to mention that all of these are just conspiracy theories and nothing is proven yet. Thanks for your understanding. Let's get into the story. It all started one night when I was super bored and decided to check out the dark web. I've always been curious about it, like everyone talks about how mysterious and dangerous it is. So I thought, why not? I made sure my computer was secure, used a special browser, and followed all the safety tips I could find. At first, it was kinda dull. I saw some sketchy marketplaces, intense political forums, and hacker communities. Interesting, but nothing too crazy. Then I found this forum called The Real Truth. The people there had usernames like Watcher and The Eye. The discussions were wild, all about secret societies and global conspiracies. The word Illuminati popped up a lot, and there was this idea about a new world order. It felt like I'd stepped into a different world. One thread really caught my eye. Proof of Illuminati control, real documents inside. It had links to supposed leaked documents and videos. As I read through it, I couldn't believe how detailed it was. They talked about the Illuminati controlling world governments, having influence in the entertainment industry, and being involved in things like various wars. What freaked me out was the amount of detail. There were names, dates, and places that seemed too specific to be made up. I downloaded a few documents out of curiosity. Most were dense and full of jargon, but one was a list of celebrities supposedly in the Illuminati. According to this, these celebrities used their fame to spread the society's symbols and messages. It included musicians, actors, and even some politicians. I kept reading and found another thread titled Population Control, the Illuminati's Plan. This one was even more disturbing. It claimed that the Illuminati wanted to reduce the global population to maintain control. The thread detailed various methods they supposedly used, including orchestrating pandemics and promoting wars. It was terrifying and left me with a sick feeling. The more I read, the more unsettled I got. There were discussions about mind control, where the Illuminati allegedly used media and technology to influence public opinion and behavior subtly. People shared their theories about hidden messages in TV shows, news broadcasts, and even ads. I found myself questioning everything I'd ever seen on TV. One particularly creepy post described secret meetings where influential figures from politics, business, and entertainment supposedly gathered to discuss and plan their strategies. The poster claimed to have inside information and described these meetings in vivid detail, right down to the eerie rituals they performed. I was about to close my browser when a new thread popped up. Alien Connections, the Illuminati's darkest secret. My curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked on it. The thread was filled with bizarre claims about the Illuminati being in contact with extraterrestrial beings. It proposed that they were using advanced alien technology to achieve their goals and maintain power. There were grainy photos and videos that supposedly showed meetings between Illuminati members and alien beings. It sounded too crazy to be true, but the fact that it was discussed so earnestly made it all the more unsettling. By now it was well past midnight and my head was spinning with all the information I had consumed. I decided it was time to call it a night. I shut down my computer and tried to sleep, but my mind kept racing. I couldn't shake the feeling that I had uncovered something I wasn't supposed to see. As I lay in bed, I heard a strange noise outside my window. It was probably just a cat or the wind, but in my heightened state of paranoia, it felt like something more sinister. I got up and checked the locks on all my doors and windows, just to be safe. That night, I had a series of vivid nightmares. I dreamt of shadowy figures watching me, of secret meetings in darkened rooms, and of alien beings with cold, emotionless eyes. I woke up several times, drenched in sweat, my heart pounding. In the morning, I decided to take a break from the dark web, but the things I had read stayed with me. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the world than I had ever imagined. The dark web had opened my eyes to a realm of conspiracy and fear, and there was no going back. So I couldn't stay away from that forum. The next night I logged back in. I was just too curious, you know. There was a new thread called Illuminati Symbols Everywhere, Proof in Plain Sight. It talked about how the Illuminati uses symbols to show their control. People posted pictures of the all-seeing eye on the US dollar bill, in company logos, and even in music videos. It was kind of creepy to think these symbols might be all around us. Then I saw another post about the entertainment industry. This one claimed that lots of celebrities are part of the Illuminati. They use their fame to spread the society's messages. There were video clips showing hidden symbols in music videos. Some seemed like a stretch, but others were pretty convincing. I kept reading and found a post about how the Illuminati controls the financial system. It said they have a hand in major banks and financial institutions, manipulating economies and markets to benefit their goals. It made me think about all the economic crises and wonder if there was some truth to it. One thread that really got to me was about population control. It claimed the Illuminati orchestrated events like pandemics to reduce the global population. It talked about how they spread diseases and created wars to cause mass casualties. It was a terrifying thought, and I felt a chill as I read it. There was more about their mind control tactics. The post said the Illuminati uses media to influence how people think and act. There were stories about hidden messages in TV shows and news broadcasts designed to shape public opinion. It made me question everything I see on TV. Then I found a post about secret meetings. It described how influential people from different sectors get together to plan their strategies. The details were vivid, with descriptions of dark rooms and strange rituals. It sounded like something from a movie, but the way it was written made it seem real. One of the most bizarre threads was about the alleged alien connections. It claimed the Illuminati was in contact with extraterrestrial beings and used advanced alien technology to keep their power. There were grainy photos and videos that supposedly showed these interactions. It seemed crazy, but by now, I was willing to believe almost anything. As I kept reading, I noticed that many posts were from users who claimed to have inside information. They talked about things in such detail that it was hard not to take them seriously. I found myself getting more and more absorbed, even though it all seemed so unbelievable. I stayed up late, reading thread after thread. The more I read, the more paranoid I became. I started to feel like I was being watched, like someone knew I was uncovering these secrets. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see someone in the dark. Finally, I forced myself to shut down my computer and go to bed. But even then, I couldn't escape the feeling that I had stumbled onto something big, something I wasn't supposed to know. I lay awake for hours, my mind racing with all the information I had taken in. In the morning, I felt exhausted and uneasy. I tried to go about my day as usual, but the theories I had read kept playing over and over in my mind. It was like a puzzle I couldn't put down. I needed to know more, even if it meant diving deeper into the darkness. So the next night I went back to the forum. I couldn't help myself. I was hooked. I found a thread called Secret Meetings of the Illuminati. This one described how influential people from politics, business, and entertainment get together to plan their strategies. The details were so vivid, it was like the person writing it had been there. They talked about these meetings happening in dark rooms, with everyone wearing masks and performing strange rituals. It sounded like something out of a horror movie, but the way it was written made it seem real. I couldn't stop reading. There was another post about the financial system. It said the Illuminati controls major banks and financial institutions. They manipulate economies and markets to benefit their goals. It made me think about all the economic crises and wonder if there was some truth to it. I also read more about the population control theories. This one claimed the Illuminati orchestrated events like pandemics to reduce the global population. They spread diseases and create wars to cause mass casualties. It was a terrifying thought, and I felt a chill as I read it. Then there was more about mind control. The post said the Illuminati uses media to influence how people think and act. There were stories about hidden messages in TV shows and news broadcasts designed to shape public opinion. It made me question everything I see on TV. One of the most bizarre threads was about the alleged alien connections. It claimed the Illuminati was in contact with extraterrestrial beings and used advanced alien technology to keep their power. There were grainy photos and videos that supposedly showed these interactions. It seemed crazy, but by now I was willing to believe almost anything. As I kept reading, I noticed that many posts were from users who claimed to have inside information. They talked about things in such detail that it was hard not to take them seriously. I found myself getting more and more absorbed, even though it all seemed so unbelievable. I stayed up late, reading thread after thread. The more I read, the more paranoid I became. I started to feel like I was being watched, like someone knew I was uncovering these secrets. I kept looking over my shoulder, expecting to see someone in the dark. By now I was really hooked. I had to know more. That forum was all I could think about, so that night I went back to see what else I could find. There was a new thread called Exposing the Puppet Masters. This one listed names of politicians, business leaders, and even some royals who were supposedly part of the Illuminati. There were photos of these people at exclusive events and private meetings. It was creepy to see how all these powerful people might be connected. Another post talked about world events being planned by the Illuminati. It suggested that wars and political problems were all part of their plan to keep control. The idea was that these events were distractions to keep us from seeing what was really going on. It made me wonder about all the things happening in the world, and if they were really just part of a bigger plan. Then I found a thread about mind control. It said the Illuminati uses technology to influence how we think and act. They mentioned subliminal messages in TV shows and ads, and even social media algorithms designed to control us. It made me question how much of what I see every day is really my own choice. One of the most disturbing threads was about experiments. It claimed the Illuminati did secret experiments on people without them knowing. These experiments were supposed to test new mind control techniques and even genetic changes. There were stories from people who believed they were victims of these experiments. Their stories were detailed and really creepy. There were also posts about secret bases where these experiments and meetings happened. These places were always in remote locations and heavily guarded. Some users posted satellite images and maps showing where these places might be. It was scary to think there could be entire facilities dedicated to such dark activities. Then there was a thread about the New World Order. This one talked about the Illuminati's plan for a one-world government. They said global organizations and agreements were steps toward this goal. The idea was that we were all being led into a future where freedom wouldn't exist. It was a chilling thought. As I read more, I noticed something weird. Some of the users who posted the most detailed information started to disappear. Their accounts were deactivated, and their posts were gone. It felt like they had been silenced. This made me even more paranoid. What if they were getting too close to the truth? That night, I heard noises outside my window again. This time, it sounded like footsteps. I froze, listening. The footsteps stopped, and I peeked out, but saw nothing. My heart was pounding. I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. I decided to take a break from the forum. I needed to clear my head. But even when I tried to stay away, I couldn't stop thinking about everything I'd read. The theories, the connections, the disappearances, it all felt too real. When I finally went back to the forum, it had changed. Some threads were gone, and a few active users hadn't posted in days. It was like the forum itself was being watched and controlled. I posted a few questions, asking if anyone else noticed the changes. but got no replies. That's when I realized I had to be careful. Maybe I had gotten too deep. I decided to save everything I found: screenshots, documents, and notes. I didn't know what I was going to do with it all, but I felt like I needed to protect myself. I still can't shake the feeling that I've uncovered something dangerous. The more I learn, the more questions I have. I don't know if I'll ever get to the bottom of it, but I can't stop now. This journey has changed how I see the world, and there's no going back. So I went back one last time, looking for answers. I found a thread called The Ultimate Truth, which tried to tie everything together. It covered everything I had read about the Illuminati: their control over governments, influence in entertainment, manipulation of the financial system, population control, mind control, secret experiments, and even alien connections. Reading through it, I realized that all these things were just conspiracy theories. None of it was proven. Everything was based on speculation and coincidences. Yet despite the lack of solid evidence, it all made a strange kind of sense to me. The connections and patterns felt too real to ignore. But I understood that everyone needs to decide for themselves what to believe and trust. After all this, my biggest takeaway is to be cautious. The dark web is full of unknown dangers, and it's easy to get lost in these theories. For your own safety, it's better to stay away from those dark corners of the internet. My journey down this rabbit hole has made me more paranoid and fearful, and I don't want that for anyone else. Stay safe, everyone. Remember, not everything you read online is true. It's important to question things, but don't let the questions take over your life. I've always been into conspiracy theories. You know, those late-night YouTube videos and endless scrolling on Reddit. It started as a fun way to pass the time, but one cold December night, I found something that changed everything for me. It all started with a mention of the Montauk Project in a random Reddit post. It was a typical Friday night, and I was home alone, browsing through Reddit. I stumbled across a thread about conspiracy theories, and someone mentioned the Montauk Project. They linked to an old hidden forum on the dark web. I was curious, so I fired up my Tor browser and followed the links through a maze of pages until I found myself on this old-school website. It was like stepping back in time, just plain text, no fancy design. The forum was called Project Phoenix. It was full of threads about secret government projects like MKUltra and Area 51. But the one that caught my eye was titled Montauk Project: Eyewitness Accounts and Documents. I clicked on it, not knowing what I was getting myself into. The first post was by a user named The Gatekeeper. He said he was a former military officer who worked at Montauk Air Force Base in the 1980s. His story was long and detailed, filled with personal stories and technical terms that made it sound real. He said Montauk was where the government did some of the most messed up experiments ever, like mind control and time travel. The Gatekeeper described a piece of equipment called the Montauk chair. It was supposed to boost psychic powers. He painted a creepy picture of a plain chair covered in wires and screens, with a strange interface where you put your hands. It gave me chills just reading about it. He shared a particularly disturbing story about a young boy, no older than 12, brought in one night. The boy was terrified, crying, and begging to go home. They strapped him into the Montauk chair and started their experiment, trying to send his mind to a different time. The boy screamed and shook for hours, the machines making weird noises. Then everything went quiet. The boy slumped in the chair, and when they unstrapped him, he stared blankly, speaking in a low voice about events from decades ago, places he'd never been, and people long dead. It was like something else was talking through him. The way the Gatekeeper described it, I could almost hear the boy's haunting voice in my head. I couldn't stop reading. I spent the whole night going through the thread, which had hundreds of posts. Other users shared their stories and pieces of information, each more disturbing than the last. One user, Montauk Survivor, claimed he was a test subject. His posts were all over the place, filled with broken sentences and jumbled memories. He talked about being locked in a dark room, hearing strange noises and feeling like he was being watched all the time. The more I read, the more I felt like I was uncovering something I shouldn't know. The stories had too many matching details to be made up. It was like peeling back layers of a hidden secret, one that people in power wanted to stay buried. As the night went on, I found a sub-thread called Evidence. Here, users shared photos, documents, and audio recordings supposedly smuggled out of the Montauk base. Most of the photos were blurry, but one stood out, a grainy black and white picture of the Montauk chair. It looked exactly as the gatekeeper described, a regular chair with a bunch of wires and electrodes in a creepy, dimly lit room. It made my skin crawl. The documents were even scarier. They were scanned copies of official-looking reports detailing various experiments. The language was vague and technical, but the implications were horrifying. One report talked about temporal displacement and psychic augmentation, with notes on the mental and physical state of the subjects. It was written in a cold, detached tone, like they were talking about lab rats, not people. Then there were the audio recordings. They were old and crackly, but you could hear snippets of conversations between scientists, the muffled screams of subjects, and the eerie hum of machines. Listening to them felt like eavesdropping on a nightmare, each sound a glimpse into a world of pain and fear. By the time morning came, I was deeply disturbed but also hooked. I knew I was getting into dangerous territory, learning secrets that powerful people wanted to keep hidden, but I couldn't stop. The more I learned, the more I needed to know. This was just the beginning. The deeper I went, the darker and more twisted the story became. The Montauk Project was just the start, and what lay beneath was a darkness that threatened to change everything I thought I knew about reality. After that first night, I couldn't stop thinking about the Montauk Project. Every free moment I had, I was back on that forum, reading through posts and trying to piece everything together. It wasn't long before I started seeing patterns and connecting dots that led me even deeper into this mystery. One night, I found a post by someone named Truth Seeker 84. They claimed to have documents linking the Montauk Project to other secret experiments across the country. According to them, Montauk was just one part of a much bigger operation. They mentioned places like Camp Hero, Brookhaven National Laboratory, and even some abandoned schools and hospitals. Truth Seeker 84's post had links to more files, but they were encrypted. I had to learn how to decrypt them, which was a whole new level of paranoia. The files included blueprints, experiment logs, and lists of names. Many names were blacked out, but a few were readable, and some I recognized from the news, missing persons mostly. It was like finding pieces of a very scary puzzle. One document that really freaked me out was a log of an experiment called Project Rainbow. It described tests on teleportation and time travel using massive electromagnetic fields. The results were inconsistent and often disastrous. Subjects would come back with severe mental and physical issues, describing strange visions and feeling like they had been gone for years, even though only minutes had passed. Another creepy find was a set of interview transcripts with surviving test subjects. These people talked about being taken from their homes, drugged, and subjected to weird and painful experiments. One man remembered being put in a tank filled with a strange liquid that made him feel like he was floating in space. He saw flashes of different times and places, some familiar and some completely strange. His descriptions matched up with what other survivors had said. The more I read, the more I found mentions of something called the Montauk Boys. This was supposedly a group of kids taken from the streets or orphanages and used in experiments. They were trained to develop psychic abilities like remote viewing and mind control. Some posts even suggested these boys were being groomed to become sleeper agents, with their memories wiped clean after each session. One night, while going through another batch of decrypted files, I found a series of emails between high-ranking officials. They discussed moving the Montauk experiments to a more secure location because of increasing public interest and potential leaks. The emails were full of bureaucratic language, but the message was clear. They were worried about being exposed. As I read on, I found mentions of something called the Phoenix Program. This seemed to be a continuation of the Montauk Project, aiming to perfect the techniques they had been developing. The tone of the emails was urgent and paranoid, with constant references to operational security and contingency plans. By now, I was feeling the pressure. My sleep was filled with nightmares about shadowy figures and endless dark corridors. During the day, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was like the paranoia was seeping into my everyday life. But I couldn't stop. I had to know more. One of the last things I found that night was a set of coordinates and a cryptic message. Come see for yourself. The coordinates pointed to a remote area near Montauk. It was a bold move, but I knew I had to go there. I needed to see if any of this was real, or if it was just an elaborate hoax. So I made plans to visit Montauk. I packed a bag, made sure my phone was fully charged, and told a friend where I was going, just in case. As I drove through the night, the reality of what I was doing started to sink in. This wasn't just some internet mystery anymore. I was about to step into the heart of it. The drive was long and eerie. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being followed, but every time I looked in the rearview mirror, there was nothing but empty road. The anticipation built with every mile, and by the time I reached Montauk, my nerves were shot. I parked near the coordinates and took a deep breath. This was it. I was about to uncover the truth behind the Montauk Project, and there was no turning back. When I finally got to Montauk, it was really quiet. The coordinates led me to a spot near Camp Hero, which is an old military base. The place looked abandoned, with rusty fences and old no trespassing signs. It was late afternoon, and the sun was setting, making everything look even creepier. I parked my car and started walking towards the base. My heart was pounding. I kept looking around, expecting someone to stop me. But there was no one. Just the wind and the occasional rustle of leaves. I found a hole in the fence and slipped through. Inside, it looked like nobody had been there for years. There were old buildings, some with broken windows, others boarded up. I had a flashlight with me, so I turned it on and started looking around. As I walked through the base, I found a building that seemed more intact than the others. The door was slightly open, so I pushed it and stepped inside. The air smelled musty, like mold and old paper. The first room I entered was empty except for some old furniture covered in dust. I went deeper into the building and found more interesting stuff. In one room, there were old filing cabinets full of documents. Most of them were boring, but a few caught my eye. They had the same kind of language and references I had seen in the files online. Then I found a staircase leading down to what looked like a basement. The door at the bottom was heavy and metal, with a big, rusty lock. Surprisingly, the lock was broken, so I pushed the door open. Inside, it was dark and cold. My flashlight flickered, which was pretty creepy. The basement was like a maze of rooms and hallways. In one room, I found old lab equipment and strange machines. It looked like something from a sci-fi movie. There were chairs with restraints, electrodes, and wires everywhere. This must have been where they did their experiments. I took out my phone and started taking pictures, trying to document everything. Then I heard a noise. It was faint, like a whisper, but it made me freeze. I turned off my flashlight and stood still, listening. The whispering continued and seemed to be getting closer. Panicking, I hurried back through the maze of rooms and up the stairs. I didn't stop until I was outside, back in the fading light. I took a moment to catch my breath and calm down. I didn't know if the whispers were real or just my imagination, but I didn't want to stick around to find out. I made my way back to the car, constantly looking over my shoulder. As I drove away, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Even when I got home, that feeling lingered. I reviewed the pictures I had taken and started organizing the documents I had found. Over the next few days, I went through everything carefully. The documents and photos confirmed a lot of what I had read online. There were references to mind control experiments, psychic training, and even time travel tests. The more I learned, the more real it all seemed. I shared some of my findings on the forum, and other users were just as shocked as I was. Some of them encouraged me to go back and get more evidence, but I wasn't sure if I had the courage to do it. The visit to Montauk had really shaken me, and I wasn't sure how much more I could handle. After my trip to Montauk, I took a break for a few days. I needed to clear my head, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The mystery kept bugging me. I decided to go back online and look for more clues. I went back to the Project Phoenix forum and posted some of the pictures I took. The responses were fast and intense. Some people were excited and wanted more, while others told me to be careful. One user, Deep Dive 123, sent me a private message. They said they had more encrypted files and offered to share them. Of course, I wanted to see them. Deep Dive 123 sent me a link to a hidden folder with more documents, videos, and audio files. I spent hours decrypting and going through them. What I found was even more disturbing than before. One document talked about an experiment with electromagnetic fields and psychic abilities. It described how they put people in a chamber and exposed them to high levels of electromagnetic radiation to boost their psychic powers. Some people reported increased abilities, but others had severe mental and physical side effects. Another file was a video from the 1980s. It showed a young boy, maybe 10 years old, strapped to a chair like the one in the photos I found. Scientists were asking him questions and monitoring his responses. The boy looked scared and confused. At one point, he started speaking in a language I didn't recognize. The video ended suddenly, leaving me with more questions. The audio files were the hardest to listen to. They recorded conversations between scientists discussing the experiments in cold, clinical terms. There were also recordings of the subjects during the experiments, their voices filled with fear and confusion. One recording stood out, a subject describing a place that didn't exist in our time. They talked about strange landscapes and beings that sounded like they were from another world. I shared some of these findings on the forum. The reactions were mixed. Some people were shocked, others didn't believe it. Some users suggested going public with the information, but I wasn't sure about that. Others warned me again to be careful, saying people who get too close to the truth often disappear. One night, while I was deep in my research, I got a call from an unknown number. The voice on the other end was calm but firm. They told me to stop what I was doing and delete everything I had found. Before I could respond, they hung up. The call freaked me out. How did they get my number? Who were they? I started feeling paranoid, always looking over my shoulder and checking my phone for signs of hacking. I knew I was in deep, but I couldn't stop now. I had to find out the truth no matter what. I decided to reach out to some journalists anonymously. I shared parts of the information I had gathered. I hoped they could help bring the story to light without exposing myself too much. It was risky, but I felt like I had no choice. As I waited for responses, I kept digging. The Montauk Project, the experiments, the missing people, it was all connected. I just needed to find the final piece of the puzzle. But the closer I got to the truth, the more dangerous it seemed. The secrets of the Montauk Project were deep and dark, and finding them might come at a high price. The days after that call were really tense. I kept my phone on silent and was always looking over my shoulder. It felt like someone was watching me, and the paranoia was getting to me. But I kept going, determined to find out the truth. I finally heard back from one of the journalists I contacted. They were interested in my findings and wanted to meet in person. We met at a busy coffee shop. I brought all my files, photos, and documents with me. The journalist listened carefully as I went through everything, asking questions and taking notes. After our meeting, I felt a mix of relief and anxiety. I had handed over all the information, but I still felt uneasy. The journalist promised to look into it and get back to me. Days turned into weeks and I didn't hear anything. I kept checking the forum and sharing updates, but I noticed some of the more active users had gone silent. It was unsettling, but I tried to focus on other things to take my mind off it. One evening, I got an email from the journalist. They thanked me for the information but explained that they couldn't find any solid evidence to back up the claims. The documents, photos, and videos, while interesting, weren't enough to prove anything concrete. I felt both disappointed and relieved. I had spent so much time and energy on this, but in the end, it seemed like it was all just speculation and rumors. The Montauk Project, the experiments, the missing people, it was all just a series of coincidences and stories that people had turned into something more. Looking back, it was clear that I had gotten caught up in the excitement and mystery. The stories were compelling, the evidence seemed real, but without solid proof, it all meant nothing. These were just conspiracy theories. Interesting, sure, but just stories people tell. I decided to step back from the forum and the dark web for a while. I needed to clear my head and focus on things that were real and tangible. The Montauk Project would remain a strange chapter in my life, a reminder of how easy it is to get lost in the search for truth. In the end, I learned a lot about myself and the nature of conspiracies. They can be fascinating and even scary, but without real evidence, they are just stories. This is a warning for anyone who thinks the dark web is just a scary story or a playground for thrill seekers. It's real, and it can mess up your life in ways you can't even imagine. Here's my story. I'm a pretty regular guy. I live in a small town, work a 9-to-5 job, and spend most of my free time gaming or watching Netflix. A few months ago, I stumbled upon some YouTube videos about the dark web. You know, those top 10 scariest things found on the dark web type videos. I got curious and my curiosity got the better of me. I decided to explore a bit, thinking it was all exaggerated. I couldn't have been more wrong. It started innocently enough. I downloaded Tor, got a VPN, and began browsing. Most of it was boring. Forums, marketplaces, nothing too shocking. Then I found a site with a simple black background and a chat box. It didn't have a name, just an IP address. Out of boredom, I entered the chat and said, "Hello." Big mistake. At first, it seemed like a regular chat room with random people talking about tech, sharing weird memes and discussing conspiracy theories. But then, someone with the username Evil messaged me directly. "Nice to meet you, Michael." My heart skipped a beat. I hadn't given my name, I replied, asking who they were and how they knew my name. No response. I tried to brush it off as a lucky guess and logged out, but the unease lingered. The next day, I noticed my computer was acting strange. Programs were opening and closing on their own. My webcam light was on, even though I never used it. I ran a virus scan, but it came up clean. I unplugged my webcam, but that didn't help. A week later, I received a package at my doorstep. No return address. Inside was a USB stick. Against my better judgment, I plugged it into an old laptop, not connected to the internet. It contained a single text file named Instructions. The file read, "You have been chosen. Complete the tasks or face the consequences." I laughed nervously, thinking it was a prank. But then my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Check your email." Sure enough, my inbox had a new message from Evil 2. It contained a video file. I hesitated, then clicked play. The video showed surveillance footage of me walking into my house, grocery shopping, even sleeping. Someone had been watching me, and they had my routine down to a T. Panic set in. I called the police, but they couldn't do much without any direct threats or evidence of a crime. I changed all my passwords, installed new security software, and even bought a new computer. For a while, things were quiet. I thought maybe it was over. I was wrong. A month later, things escalated. My social media accounts were hacked, and disturbing posts were made in my name. Posts supporting a cult I'd never heard of, worshiping some dark entity called Nixara. My friends and family were horrified and confused. I received calls and messages asking if I was okay. I tried to explain it was a hack, but the damage was done. People were distancing themselves from me. One night I woke up to the sound of my doorbell ringing incessantly. Groggy and annoyed, I stumbled to the door and opened it. There was no one there, but on my porch was a symbol painted in red, an intricate design with a central eye staring right at me. I quickly washed it away, my hands trembling. I thought of leaving town, but the messages made it clear they knew my every move. "Run, and it gets worse," one read. My life had turned into a nightmare, and there was no waking up. I started receiving strange packages, black candles, bones, cryptic notes written in a language I couldn't understand. Each package was more unsettling than the last. I knew I had to find out more about Nixara and this cult. My only hope was to understand why they had targeted me and how I could make it stop. I spent hours online, diving into forums and obscure websites, trying to piece together any information. Nixara, it seemed, was an ancient entity worshipped by a secretive cult. Their rituals were said to bring power and fortune to their followers, but at a great cost, often involving human sacrifice. Then, one night, as I was deep in my research, my computer screen went black. A single message appeared. "You've been chosen to serve. Prepare yourself." That's when the real terror began. This is just the beginning of my story. Trust me, things only got darker and more twisted from here. I'll update soon with the next part, but for now, be careful out there. The internet is a dark and dangerous place, and you never know who might be watching. Hey everyone, I'm back with part 2. Things got really bad after that last message. I still can't believe everything that happened, but here it goes. After getting that message saying I had been chosen to serve, I was on edge all the time. I barely slept, constantly checking my windows and doors, making sure everything was locked tight. It didn't help much. One night, I was watching TV, trying to distract myself, when I heard a noise from the backyard. It sounded like someone was moving around back there. My heart started racing. I grabbed a flashlight and quietly went to check it out. When I got to the back door, I saw shadows moving near the trees. There were people back there, and they were looking right at my house. I freaked out and called the police. While I was on the phone, I heard a loud crash from the front of the house. I ran to see what it was, and there was a brick lying in my living room with a note attached to it. The note read, "Come outside, Michael, join us or face the consequences." I told the police everything, and they promised to send a patrol car. But by the time they arrived, the people in the backyard were gone. The officers did a quick check around the house but didn't find anything. They told me to call if anything else happened and left. I didn't feel safe at all. A couple of nights later, it got even worse. I woke up in the middle of the night to the smell of smoke. My heart pounded as I jumped out of bed and ran to the living room. There, I saw small fires burning in a circle around my house like some kind of ritual. I grabbed a fire extinguisher and managed to put them out. But as soon as I did, I heard chanting from outside. I looked out the window and saw a group of people wearing dark robes, holding candles and chanting in some language I didn't understand. They were standing in a circle, and in the middle they had some kind of altar with strange symbols painted on it. I saw one of them holding a knife, and it was clear they were preparing for something terrible. I tried calling the police again, but this time my phone didn't work. It was dead, even though it had been charging all night. I had no idea what to do. The chanting grew louder, and I felt a wave of panic wash over me. I had to get out of there. I grabbed my keys and snuck out the back door, hoping they wouldn't see me. As I ran to my car, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned and saw two of the cult members running after me. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the key into the ignition. I finally got the car started and sped off, tires screeching. I drove to a friend's house a few towns over, constantly checking my mirrors to make sure I wasn't being followed. When I got there, I told him everything. He thought I was joking at first, but when he saw how scared I was, he believed me. We stayed up all night trying to figure out what to do. The next day, I went to the police again, this time in my friend's town. I told them everything, showed them the messages, the video, even the burnt patches in my yard. They took me seriously this time and promised to investigate. For now, I'm staying with my friend, trying to lay low. I don't know what the cult wanted to do with me, but it was clear they needed my blood for some evil ritual. I managed to get away this time, but I know they're still out there waiting. I'm scared they'll find me again, but I'm not giving up. That's it for part 2. Things have been really intense, but I'll keep you all updated. Be careful out there and don't mess with things you don't understand. The dark web isn't just a story, it's real and it's dangerous. Hey everyone, back with part 3. Things got even crazier and I need to get this out. So after moving to my friend's house, I thought we were safe. But then I got a text from an unknown number. "We know you're at friend's address." They texted me his address. "Come to us or we'll hurt him." My heart dropped. I showed the message to my friend and he looked terrified. He didn't ask for any of this, and I couldn't let him get hurt because of me. We quickly packed some essentials and decided to run. We got into my car and started driving with no idea where we were going. We just wanted to get as far away as possible. Every few minutes I checked the rearview mirror, paranoid that someone was following us. My phone kept buzzing with messages, all from the same number, telling me to stop running and face them. I kept ignoring the texts, but my friend was getting more and more anxious. He kept asking what we were going to do, where we were going to go. I didn't have any answers. All I knew was that we had to keep moving. We drove for hours, only stopping for gas and food. We finally ended up at a motel in a town I'd never even heard of. We checked in and I made sure to pay in cash, hoping it would make it harder for them to track us. We stayed in the room, curtains drawn, lights off, whispering our plans. That night, I got another text. "You can't hide forever. We will find you." I didn't sleep at all. My friend and I took turns keeping watch, but every little noise made us jump. The stress was getting to us. My friend kept saying we should go to the police again, but I had a feeling it wouldn't help. These people seemed to be everywhere. The next morning we decided to move again. We couldn't stay in one place for too long. We packed up and hit the road once more, driving aimlessly. My friend kept asking if we could ever go back to our normal lives. I didn't know what to tell him. I kept thinking about the cult and their threats. I needed to find a way to stop them, but I had no idea how. We were just two guys on the run, up against something way bigger than us. But giving up wasn't an option. I couldn't let them win. We drove through small towns, avoided main roads, and tried to stay off the grid. I knew it was only a matter of time before they found us again. But until then, we had to keep moving. This is all for now. I'll keep you all updated if we are still alive. I'm back with part 4. Things have taken a really bad turn, and I'm seriously freaked out. So my friend and I were staying at this motel, trying to keep a low profile. We were both stressed and tired, but we felt a bit safer there. One evening, I decided to go out and grab some food. My friend wanted to stay in the room to rest. I thought it'd be fine. I'd only be gone for about 30 minutes. I went to a nearby fast food place, grabbed some burgers and drinks, and headed back to the motel. When I got back, I noticed the door was slightly open. My heart started racing. I rushed in, calling out my friend's name, but there was no answer. The room was empty. No sign of a struggle. No sign of him. It was like he had just vanished. I checked the bathroom, under the bed, everywhere. Nothing. His bag was still there, his phone, everything except him. I tried calling his phone, but it was on the nightstand, ringing away. Panic set in. I ran to the motel office and asked if anyone had seen him leave, but the clerk said no. I even asked some of the other guests, but no one had seen anything. I went back to the room, trying to figure out what to do. I searched for any clues, any sign of what might have happened, but there was nothing. It was like he had just disappeared into thin air. I called the police and reported him missing. They came and took my statement, searched the room, and asked a lot of questions. They said they'd do what they could, but I could tell they didn't have much hope. It was like he had just vanished without a trace. I felt sick to my stomach. My friend was missing, and it was my fault. I shouldn't have left him alone. Now, I was more scared than ever. If they could take him without a trace, what could they do to me? I'm still at the motel, waiting for any news from the police. I don't know what to do next. I feel completely lost and alone. I just want my friend back and for this nightmare to end. I'm not sure what's going to happen next. I'll keep you all updated. Hey everyone, back with the final part. This has been a long and scary journey, but here it is. After my friend went missing, I knew I couldn't stay in one place anymore. The cult was serious and they could get to anyone close to me. I decided to disappear completely. I booked a flight to a small country on the other side of the world, somewhere I hoped they couldn't find me. I changed everything about myself. I got a new hairstyle, a new name, a completely new identity. I didn't tell anyone where I was going, not even my family. I had to cut all ties to keep everyone safe. It's been 6 years since I last saw my friend. I still think about him every day and wonder if he's okay. I never found out what happened to him. The police never got any leads and the case went cold. I feel guilty for not being able to help him, but I had to save myself. Living in a new country has been hard. I'm always looking over my shoulder, always wondering if they'll find me. But so far I've managed to stay hidden. I don't use my real name online, and I stay away from anything that might give away my location. I've started a new life here. I've made new friends, got a job, and tried to move on. But the fear never really goes away. Every time I see a stranger looking at me for too long, my heart races. I don't know if I'll ever feel truly safe again. This is my last update. I wanted to share my story to warn others. The dark web isn't just stories and myths. It's real, and it's dangerous. Be careful what you get involved with, and don't take anything lightly. Thanks for listening, everyone. That's it for part 5. This has been a really intense journey for me, and I hope my story helps someone out there. Take care, everyone.